The day aliens realized human obsolete weapons never. Jam Part 2. The technological gap Staff Sergeant Alan Carter wiped the sweat from his brow as he finished reassembling the old M42 assault rifle. The weapon was over 50 years old, a relic from before energy weapons became standard issue for Earth's military forces. His workshop sat in the basement of the new Colorado Military Academy, far from the gleaming training facilities above, where recruits practiced with the latest plasma rifles. "Sergeant, why are we still maintaining these dinosaurs?" Private First Class Olivia Martinez asked, looking up from the collection of springs and pins spread across her workbench. Nobody's used ballistic weapons in actual combat for decades. Alan smiled as he worked the action on the rifle, the satisfying click-clack echoing in the room. "Because, Martinez, sometimes the old ways are the best ways. These rifles will fire. Under any conditions, underwater, in space, during electrical storms. No charging needed, no complex targeting systems to fail." Olivia rolled her eyes. "Yeah, but they're so inaccurate compared to the new stuff. My M87 can hit a target at 2 miles with perfect precision, until its battery dies or the targeting computer glitches," Alan said, setting the rifle in the rack. "Then you've got yourself a very expensive club." The door to the workshop slid open. Captain Ryan Kelly stood in the doorway, his normally relaxed face tense with worry. "Carter, Martinez, drop what you're doing. Emergency briefing in 5 minutes." The briefing room was packed with personnel from every division. Images of the Kelvari ships hung in the air above the central table, rotating slowly as Lieutenant Commander Natalie Powell pointed out various features. "Their hull is composed of a material we've never seen before," Natalie explained, her fingers expanding a section of the holographic display. "It seems to absorb energy rather than deflect it, which explains why they aren't concerned about our laser arrays." Alan watched with growing unease as Natalie continued her presentation. The technological gap between humans and Kelvari seemed insurmountable. "Their weapons are primarily plasma-based, contained within sophisticated magnetic fields," Natalie said. "Their ships appear to be controlled through an integrated AI network that coordinates their movements with perfect synchronization, intelligence." Officer Daniel Brooks stepped forward next. The young officer's normal, cheerful demeanor was gone, replaced by a grim determination. "We've managed to decode some of their transmissions," Daniel said. "What we found isn't good. The Kelvari have a pattern. They target developing spacefaring civilizations, demand resources, and if refused, they attack with overwhelming force." He brought up images of devastated worlds. "These are from their historical records. Planets they've conquered. Notice something interesting. They always target the most advanced technology first, using some kind of electromagnetic pulse to disable defense systems." Alan leaned forward, suddenly interested. "Do they use ground troops after their initial attack?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, but they're not what you'd expect." He displayed footage of alien soldiers. "Their ground forces rely entirely on powered armor and integrated weapon systems. We haven't seen any evidence of conventional weapons." Alan exchanged a glance with Olivia. The young private seemed to be connecting the same dots he was. "General." William Scott stood up. "People, we have 6 days before the Kelvari deadline. I want every advantage we can get, no matter how small. Powell, continue analyzing their tech. Brooks, keep decoding those transmissions. Everyone else, prepare your units." As the briefing ended, Alan approached the general. "Sir, I'd like to request access to the weapons archives." The general raised an eyebrow. "The archives? Those weapons haven't been used in decades." "That might be exactly what we need, sir." 2 days later, Alan supervised as military personnel hauled crates of old weapons from storage bunkers around the world. Old assault rifles, pistols, shotguns, and even bolt-action rifles lined the walls of the newly established training facility. Olivia stared in disbelief as recruits unpacked wooden boxes containing weapons that predated even the M42s she had been complaining about earlier. "Is that a revolver?" she asked, pointing at a heavy pistol a soldier was examining. Alan nodded. "Colt Python, .357 Magnum. 6 shots, no electronics, no batteries, just mechanical perfection." Across the compound, Natalie Powell had set up a binomial laboratory to study the few pieces of Kelvari technology they had gathered during the diplomatic meetings. Alan made his way there carrying a case of old ammunition. "How's it going?" he asked as he entered the lab. Natalie looked up from a microscope. "Their tech is incredible, but strange. Everything is interconnected through a wireless network. Even their personal weapons seem to require constant connection to function properly." Alan set down his case. "You think they might be vulnerable to signal jamming?" "Possibly," Natalie said, rubbing her tired eyes. "But their communication systems are far more advanced than ours. We can't block all their frequencies." "What about an EMP?" Alan suggested. "That's the thing. I think they use EMPs themselves as weapons. Their systems must be hardened against electromagnetic interference." She paused, then added, "But there's something interesting about their personal armor. It seems designed specifically to stop energy weapons, not physical projectiles." Alan smiled. "Now that is useful information." On the fourth day, Daniel Brooks burst into the command center where Earth's military leaders were gathered around a holographic map of the solar system. "We've got it," he exclaimed, waving a datapad. "We've finally decrypted their battle logs. The Kelvari have conquered 17 worlds in the last century. Every single one had advanced defense systems, energy shields, plasma weapons, AI-guided drones." General Scott frowned. "How is that good news?" "Because," Daniel said with a grin, "none of those civilizations had our particular history. None of them kept their old weapons as we did. When the Kelvari disabled their advanced tech, they had nothing to fall back on." The general turned to Alan. "Sergeant Carter, how's your training program coming along?" 3,000 troops now certified on ballistic weapons, sir. We've distributed the old armories to key defensive positions on Earth and throughout the colonies. If their EMP takes out our advanced systems, we'll still have plenty of fight left." "What about our space assets?" asked Susan Wright, who had been recalled from the diplomatic corps to help coordinate the defense. "That's the bad news," Natalie Powell said, joining the conversation. "Our ships and orbital platforms are too dependent on advanced electronics. If the Kelvari use a system-wide EMP, most of our space defenses will be crippled." "Most, but not all," Jack Miller said, speaking up from where he sat at the edge of the room. The engineer had been working day and night since the alien ultimatum. "I've been modifying some of our older defense satellites. The original railgun platforms from the 2130s used mechanical targeting systems as backups. I've been reactivating those systems." General Scott nodded slowly. "So we'll have some orbital defense capability and ground forces with weapons that might actually penetrate their armor." He looked around the room. "It's not much, but it's something." Susan checked her watch. "The Kelvari deadline expires in 36 hours. We should expect their attack soon after." Alan thought about the young recruits he'd been training, most of whom had never fired a bullet in their lives. They would soon face an enemy with technology far beyond their understanding. Yet as he looked around the room at the determined faces of Earth's defenders, he felt a spark of hope. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones, and the Kelvari were about to learn that human obsolete weapons could be the deadliest of all. The Day Aliens Realized Human Obsolete Weapons Never Jam Part 1. First contact gone. Wrong Jack Miller floated through the maintenance tunnel of Earth's orbital defense platform, his magnetic boots clicking softly as he moved. The year was 2187, and humanity had spread throughout the solar system with colonies on Mars, Europa, and several large asteroids. As chief engineer of Earth's primary defense grid, Jack took pride in keeping the massive network of laser arrays and railguns operating at peak efficiency. "How's it looking out there, Chief?" The voice of his assistant, Paul Evans, crackled through his helmet comm. "Same as always." "These old railguns need constant attention, but they're built to last," Jack replied, running his diagnostic tool over a junction box. The screen flashed green. "These babies have been protecting Earth for 60 years now. Not the newest tech, but reliable." Jack finished his inspection and pushed off toward the airlock. Earth hung below him, a blue marble wrapped in the delicate tracery of the defense grid, a network of platforms and satellites that protected humanity's homeworld. Chief, you should get back to command. Something weird just appeared at the edge of the system, Paul said, his voice tight. On my way. In the command center of Defense Platform Alpha, screens showed a fleet of sleek vessels approaching Neptune's orbit. They moved with impossible speed and precision, nothing like the bulky human ships. Commander Susan Wright stood at the center of the room, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun, eyes fixed on the main display. What are we looking at? Unknown vessels, Commander. 17 of them, approaching at speed that exceeds our fastest ships by a factor of 10, replied Communications Officer Greg Hansen. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. I think they're trying to talk to us. Susan straightened her uniform. First contact. Send word to Earth Command and patch the transmission through. The main screen flickered, revealing a humanoid figure with blue-tinted skin, elongated features and eyes that shimmered with an inner light. When it spoke, the translation software struggled for a moment before producing English. Greetings, people of Earth. I am High Admiral Zexteral of the Kelvari Dominion. We have observed your civilization and wish to establish formal relations. Susan stepped forward. I am Commander Susan Wright of Earth's Unified Defense Force. We welcome peaceful contact with your people. The alien's expression shifted in a way Susan couldn't interpret. We request a meeting with your leaders. We have much to discuss regarding your place in the galactic community. 3 days later, Susan stood in the grand meeting hall of the Lunar Diplomatic Center. Earth's highest officials had gathered to meet the alien delegation. Jack Miller had been brought along as a technical advisor, though he felt out of place. Among the politicians and military brass, the Kelvari delegation entered the room. High Admiral Zexteral stood nearly 7 feet tall, towering over the humans. His skin shimmered with a subtle blue iridescence, and his uniform appeared to shift and flow like liquid metal. 4 other Kelvari accompanied him, each carrying what appeared to be ceremonial staffs. After formal introductions, the Kelvari requested a tour of human military facilities. Earth's president agreed, hoping to demonstrate humanity's strength while fostering goodwill. At the lunar defense base, Jack watched as Zexteral examined a railgun battery with obvious amusement. You still use physical projectiles? The alien asked, a strange clicking sound accompanying his words. Laughter, Jack realized. How quaint. Jack felt his face flush. This system can accelerate a 20-kilogram tungsten slug to 8% light speed. It'll punch through pretty much anything. Zexteral waved a 4-fingered hand dismissively. Primitive technology. My people abandoned such methods centuries ago. He produced a small device from his uniform. It projected a hologram of a weapon that resembled a sleek rifle. This personal weapon fires superheated plasma contained within a magnetic bottle. It can adjust output from non-lethal to enough power to vaporize your largest ground vehicle. One of the Earth generals cleared his throat. Perhaps you would care to demonstrate your technology? The demonstration field was hastily prepared. Targets were set at various distances. Zexteral's aide stepped forward with their weapon. When it fired, there was no sound, just a flash of blue-white light. The closest target didn't just break, it ceased to exist. Impressive, Susan admitted. Would you care to see our latest energy weapons in return? Jack noticed the aliens exchanging looks. Something felt wrong. That evening, during a formal dinner, High Admiral Zexteral finally revealed the true purpose of their visit. Your solar system lies at the edge of several expanding powers, he explained, sipping a liquid that steamed despite its apparent coldness. The Kelvari Dominion offers protection to developing worlds like yours. In exchange, we require access to your resources, particularly your water, rare minerals, and certain biological materials. Earth's president leaned forward. What kind of protection are we talking about? And what quantities of resources? Zexteral's smile didn't reach his eyes. Protection from species far less benevolent than ourselves. As for quantities, we would require approximately 30% of your planetary water reserves and 60% of annual mineral production. A stunned silence fell over the room. Susan spoke first. That would cripple our colonies. We cannot possibly agree to those terms. I understand your reluctance, Zextoral said smoothly. But consider your position. Your weapons are centuries behind ours. Your ships would be destroyed before they could fire a single shot. We are being generous by offering a peaceful arrangement. Jack couldn't stay quiet any longer. That's not an arrangement. It's a threat. The alien's eyes fixed on Jack. Not a threat, human. A reality. We have encountered dozens of species at your development stage. All eventually understand their place. Earth's president stood. We appreciate your offer, High Admiral, but Earth must decline. We are willing to establish trade on equal terms, but we will not surrender our resources under duress. Zextoral rose to his full height. A pity. You have one of your Earth weeks to reconsider. After that, we will take what we need. Your primitive defenses cannot stop us. He turned to leave, then paused. Your species shows promise. It would be regrettable to reduce your civilization to ash over a simple misunderstanding about the natural order of things. After the aliens departed, Jack approached Susan. They're going to attack, aren't they? Susan nodded grimly. 1 week. To prepare for a war against technology we can barely understand. Alert all outposts and colonies. Full defensive readiness. She looked out the window toward the stars. And pray that we find a weakness in those fancy weapons of theirs. Jack thought about the aliens' dismissal of humanity's primitive technology. There was something there. Something important about their overconfidence. He needed to examine the sensor readings from the Kelvari ships more closely. As he hurried toward the command center, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Earth's best hope might lie not in its newest weapons but in the older, simpler ones the aliens had so casually dismissed. The day aliens realized human obsolete weapons. Never Jam Part 3. The First Strike. The deadline passed with no word from the Kelvari. Earth's military forces remained on high alert, the tension growing with each passing hour. In the command center, beneath Denver, General William Scott studied the holographic display of Earth's defenses. Any sign of movement? He asked the sensor operator. Nothing yet, sir, replied the young lieutenant. Their fleet is still holding position near Mars orbit. Jack Miller stood in the corner, reviewing data on his tablet. He had spent the last day installing manual override systems on key defense platforms. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but there was no time to rest. Susan Wright entered the command center, her face grave. General, we just received a message from the Kelvari. Put it through, ordered Scott. High Admiral Zextoral's face appeared on the main screen. People of Earth, your time has expired. We regret your choice but respect your right to make it. Prepare yourselves. The transmission cut off abruptly. All stations, battle stations, Scott barked. This is not a drill. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Jack's tablet suddenly went dark. Then the lights flickered and died, plunging the command center into darkness. Emergency lighting activated a moment later, casting an eerie red glow over the worried faces. EMP detected, shouted a technician. Massive electromagnetic pulse spreading throughout the system. Outside Earth's atmosphere, the defense grid went silent. Satellites stopped transmitting. Communications networks crashed. The advanced laser arrays and energy shield generators that protected Earth from meteors and space debris shut down instantly. On the moon, Colonel Frank Harris watched, in horror as his base's systems failed one after another. The main viewscreen still worked, powered by a shielded backup generator, showing the Kelvari fleet accelerating toward Earth. Status report, Harris demanded. Sir, we've lost everything electronic, replied his second-in-command. Main defenses are offline, communications are down. Harris pounded his fist on the console. What about the railgun batteries? The targeting computers are fried, but the guns themselves still work. They're mechanical at their core. Harris thought quickly. Can we aim them manually? Yes, sir. The old targeting scopes are still intact. Then get crews to every battery. We're going to give these aliens a surprise. In orbit around Earth, the Kelvari fleet spread out in perfect formation. Their sleek ships glowed with blue energy as they charged weapon systems. The lead vessel, nearly a mile long, moved into firing position. Inside, High Admiral Zex Torl watched with satisfaction as his tactical display showed Earth's defenses going dark. Their primitive technology falls as expected, he commented to his second-in-command. Begin the bombardment of their military installations. With pleasure, Admiral, replied the officer, his fingers dancing over the controls. The first volley of plasma bolts streaked toward Earth, targeting military bases in North America. More shots followed, aimed at installations across the planet. The Kelvari ships moved with precise coordination, their networked AI systems calculating optimal firing solutions. Then something unexpected happened. From the lunar surface, a streak of light shot upward. A massive tungsten rod, accelerated to tremendous speed by electromagnetic forces, slammed into one of the smaller Kelvari vessels. The impact tore through the alien ship's hull, sending it spinning out of formation. Zex Torl stared in disbelief. How is this possible? Their defense grid was disabled. Unknown, Admiral, replied his tactical officer. It appears to be coming from their lunar base. Target that installation immediately. Colonel Harris watched through a manual periscope as the first shot struck home. A cheer went up from the gunners. Keep firing, he ordered. Aim for their engines. The massive railguns, designed as a last resort defense, thundered as they launched projectile after projectile. Without computer guidance, most missed their targets. But the Kelvari ships were numerous, and some shots found their mark. On Earth, General Scott had relocated to a hardened bunker under the Rocky Mountains. This facility, built over a century ago during the resource wars, relied on old technology that had proven resistant to the EMP. Get me in contact with our remaining forces, he ordered. A communications officer worked the radio equipment, actual radio, not the quantum communicators that had fallen silent. Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from the lunar base. Colonel Harris reports his railguns are operational and engaging the enemy. Scott allowed himself a small smile. Any word from our orbital platforms? Most are non-responsive, but platform, Charlie is reporting limited functionality. Chief Engineer Miller's modifications worked. They've got manual control of their weapons. In space, defense platform. Charlie drifted silently, most of its systems dead. Inside, a small crew worked frantically to bring the old backup systems online. A young lieutenant turned a manual crank, adjusting the aim of the platform's main railgun. Target acquired, she called out. Firing solution ready. Fire, ordered the platform commander. The railgun bucked as it launched its projectile. The recoil sent the platform spinning slightly, but the shot was away. Through a reinforced viewport, they watched as the tungsten slug tore through a Kelvari vessel that had been focusing on the lunar base. High Admiral Zex Torl could not believe what he was seeing. His perfect attack formation was breaking apart, as Earth's supposedly disabled defenses continued to fire. How are they still fighting? He demanded. Nothing should have survived that pulse. His science officer studied the readings. Admiral, their weapons appear to be purely mechanical. No electronics, no targeting computers, they're aiming manually. Impossible. No species would maintain such primitive technology. But the evidence was before his eyes. Another Kelvari ship erupted in flames as a railgun slug penetrated its reactor core. Adjust strategy, Zex Torl ordered. Target those primitive weapons specifically. On Earth's surface, Staff Sergeant Alan Carter and Private Olivia Martinez led a squad up the side of a mountain overlooking the Denver military complex. Each soldier carried old-style ballistic weapons, assault rifles, machine guns, even a few sniper rifles with simple telescopic sights. Contacts, called out the point man. Kelvari dropships entering the atmosphere. Alan raised his binoculars. Through the lenses, he could see the alien vessels descending toward the military base, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Remember your training, he told his team. Their armor is designed to stop energy weapons, not bullets. Aim for joints and sensor arrays. The dropships landed in the central courtyard of the base. Kelvari soldiers emerged, tall figures in powered armor that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. They moved with confident precision, clearly expecting no resistance. Alan keyed his radio, a simple walkie-talkie that had survived the EMP. All units, hold fire until my signal. The aliens spread out, scanning the seemingly abandoned base with their advanced sensors. They had no way of detecting the human soldiers hiding in the surrounding hills, armed with weapons that produced no energy signatures to track. When the Kelvari were fully deployed, Alan gave the order. All units open fire. The hillsides erupted with gunfire. Bullets rained down on the surprised aliens, pinging off their armor in some places but finding vulnerable spots in others. The Kelvari soldiers tried to return fire, but their weapons seemed to be malfunctioning, producing only sporadic bursts of energy. Their guns need a network connection, Alan realized, watching through his rifle scope. They can't operate independently. As the battle raged on Earth and in space, humanity's oldest weapons were proving their worth. The Kelvari's technological superiority had become their greatest weakness, while human ingenuity and those reliable old weapons began to turn the tide. The day aliens realized human obsolete weapons never jam Part 4, Adaptation and Escalation. Dawn broke over a changed world. The skies above Earth glowed with the remnants of destroyed ships, both human and alien. After the initial shock of facing resistance, the Kelvari had regrouped and adapted their tactics. They now targeted Earth's remaining defenses with precise strikes, slowly wearing down the unexpected human resistance. High Admiral Zextoril paced the command deck of his flagship. 3 of his vessels had been destroyed by primitive projectile weapons. It was unthinkable. "Have we managed to jam their communications yet?" he asked his communications officer. "Yes, Admiral. We've blocked all frequencies they might be using. Their forces should be unable to coordinate now." Zextoril nodded with satisfaction. "Excellent. Without communications, their resistance will crumble. Prepare the ground forces for the next wave. This time they will be ready for their primitive weapons." In the underground command center, General Scott struggled to maintain contact with Earth's scattered forces. The Kelvari had successfully blocked most radio signals, cutting off communication between military units. "We need to get messages through, somehow," he said, frustration evident in his voice. An older officer stepped forward. "Sir, I have an idea. Before digital communications, we used Morse code, simple electrical pulses sent through wires. We don't have a wired network covering the planet," Scott pointed out. "No, but we have the old emergency broadcast system, landlines that connect major military installations. They were never removed, just abandoned when better technology came along." Scott's eyes lit up. "Can you get it working?" "It's already operational, sir. We've been maintaining it as a museum piece at the Academy." "Then send the word out. Tell all forces to switch to pre-digital communications methods." Staff Sergeant Alan Carter crouched behind a fallen tree, listening to the static on his radio. The Kelvari jamming was effective. No signals were getting through. "What now, Sergeant?" asked Olivia Martinez, checking the ammunition in her rifle. Alan thought for a moment. "Remember those old signal flags they showed us in basic training?" Olivia nodded slowly. "The colored flags used to send messages before radio?" "Exactly." Alan pulled out a small pocket knife and cut strips from his bright orange emergency blanket. "We may not be able to talk, but we can still communicate." Soon, human forces across the battlefield were using improvised signal flags, flashing mirrors, and even messenger runners to coordinate their movements. The Kelvari, expecting Earth's forces to be isolated and confused, were caught off guard by the continued organized resistance. In orbit, Jack Miller floated through the darkened corridors of Defense Platform Alpha. Most of the crew had evacuated, but Jack had volunteered to stay behind and attempt repairs. He carried a toolbox and wore an old-style spacesuit with mechanical seals rather than the newer electronic ones. "Miller to base, if you can hear me," he said into his suit radio. "I've reached the main power junction. Going to attempt to bypass the fried circuits." Only static answered him, but he continued his work anyway. Using simple tools, wrenches, pliers, electrical tape, he connected undamaged wires directly to the backup generators. Slowly, emergency lights flickered on throughout the station. The defense platform had been built with multiple redundancies, layers upon layers of backups for critical systems. Jack had helped design those systems, insisting on mechanical alternatives, even when his colleagues had laughed at his paranoid preparations. No one was laughing now. "Admiral, we've detected activity on one of their defense platforms," reported a Kelvari sensor officer. "It appears to be powering up again." Zex's Toral frowned. "Impossible. The pulse destroyed their systems." "Nevertheless, sensors confirm energy. Readings. They've restored partial power. Target that platform immediately." Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Major Lisa Rodriguez organized civilian resistance in the suburbs of Chicago. The Kelvari had landed ground forces near major population centers, expecting to find panicked, disorganized humans. Instead, they found armed citizens alongside military personnel. Lisa had distributed stockpiled weapons, everything from modern ballistic rifles to hunting shotguns to anyone willing to fight. "Remember," she told a group of volunteers, "they rely on their technology. We rely on ourselves." A scout rushed up to her position. "Major, alien troops approaching from the east, at least 30 of them." Lisa nodded. "Get everyone in position. Remember the plan. Let them pass the first line, then close in behind them." The Kelvari ground forces moved with mechanical precision through the abandoned streets. Their armor had been modified after the first engagements, with additional plating, covering previously vulnerable joints. They carried both energy weapons and newly added physical shields, but they still expected to face enemies with energy weapons of their own. When only the crack of gunfire met them, their sensors struggled to pinpoint the source. Bullets might be primitive, but they didn't leave the same energy signature as laser fire. From windows, doorways, and rooftops, the human defenders poured fire onto the alien troops. Most shots bounced off their improved armor, but the sheer volume began to take its toll. The aliens' shields, designed to disperse energy, did little against kinetic impacts. Staff Sergeant Carter had a more ambitious plan. While the ground battle raged, he led a small team toward a damaged Kelvari vessel that had made an emergency landing outside Denver. "Remember, we need intelligence more than kills," he told his squad. "We need to understand how their tech works if we're going to beat them." The ship sat in a clearing, its sleek hull dented and scorched. 2 alien guards stood at the entry ramp, scanning the surroundings with handheld devices. Alan raised his rifle, aiming carefully. "Take them both on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." 2 shots rang out. The guards fell. "Move in, fast and quiet," Alan ordered. The human team approached the ship cautiously. They had trained for boarding actions against enemy vessels, but never against alien technology. Alan placed old-fashioned explosive charges, simple C4 with mechanical detonators, around the main hatch. Fire in the hole. The explosion tore through the ship's entry port. Alan led the way inside, rifle at the ready. The interior of the vessel was dimly lit by emergency lighting. The team moved through curved corridors until they reached what appeared to be the command center. 3 Kelvari crew members turned in surprise. One reached for a weapon on his hip, a sleek device that appeared more like a piece of jewelry than a gun. When he triggered it, nothing happened. Alan didn't hesitate. 3 shots dropped the alien. "Check the rest of the ship," he ordered. "Secure any crew and gather all the tech you can find." As his team spread through the vessel, Alan examined the alien weapon they had failed to use. He realized with growing excitement that most of the Kelvari didn't even carry physical weapons. They relied entirely on integrated systems that were now failing. "Martinez," he called to Olivia. "Look at this. Their personal weapons need network connectivity just like their ship systems. Without it, they're just carrying fancy paperweights." Olivia examined a control panel. "Sergeant, I think this is some kind of communication system. Should we try to take it?" Alan shook his head. "Better idea. Let's use it to send a message back to Earth. If we can figure out how their systems work, maybe we can turn their own tech against them." As his team continued exploring the ship, Alan realized they had stumbled upon the key to humanity's survival. The Kelvari's total dependence on interconnected technology had become their greatest vulnerability. The day aliens realized human obsolete, weapons never jam part. 5. The turning point. The battle for Earth entered its 3rd day. Smoke rose from cities around the globe, but humanity still stood defiant. In space, the situation had reached a critical point. The Kelvari fleet had regrouped after their initial losses and now formed a tight defensive formation around their massive flagship. On the bridge of his command vessel, High Admiral Zex Toril reviewed the battle reports with growing anger. What should have been a simple conquest had turned into a costly struggle. "Prepare the atmospheric ignition device," he ordered. "These humans have proven more troublesome than expected. If we cannot have their resources, no one will." His second-in-command looked alarmed. "Admiral, such a weapon has not been used since the Arcturus campaign. It will render the planet uninhabitable." "I am aware of the consequences," Zex Toril snapped. "The humans have embarrassed us before the Dominion. They must be punished, and other species must learn the price of defiance." In the command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Scott received the urgent message transmitted through the old telegraph lines. The decoded text chilled him to the bone. "The Kelvari are preparing some kind of super weapon," he told his staff. "Our observers on the lunar base report unusual energy readings from their flagship." Lieutenant Commander Natalie Powell, who had been analyzing the data from the captured Kelvari vessel, looked up from her notes. "Based on what we've learned from their systems, it could be an atmospheric ignition device. It would set Earth's atmosphere on fire." A heavy silence fell over the room. "Can we stop it?" Scott finally asked. Captain Eric Johnson of the Earth vessel Northern Star stepped forward. "Sir, my ship is still operational. We were undergoing maintenance in the shadow of the moon when the EMP hit. Our main systems are shielded." Scott considered. "This? One ship against their entire fleet? Those aren't good odds, Captain." "We don't need to fight their whole fleet," Johnson replied. "We just need to disable that flagship before they can deploy their weapon." "How?" Staff Sergeant Alan Carter, freshly returned from his mission to the downed Kelvari ship, spoke up. "A boarding action, sir. We got inside one of their vessels before. We can do it again." 6 hours later, the Northern Star approached the Kelvari fleet using the cover of debris from previous battles. The Earth vessel was small compared to the alien ships, designed more for speed than combat. In the ship's loading bay, Alan Carter checked his equipment one last time. His boarding team consisted of 12 soldiers, each armed with conventional weapons, ballistic rifles, shotguns, and plenty of simple explosives with mechanical detonators. "This is a one-way trip, isn't it?" Olivia Martinez asked quietly as she loaded shells into her shotgun. Alan nodded. "Probably. But if we don't try, there won't be an Earth to go back to." Captain Johnson's voice came over the intercom. "Boarding team, prepare for launch. We'll get as close as we can, but after that, you're on your own." The Northern Star accelerated toward the Kelvari flagship, using bursts of speed to dodge enemy fire. At the last possible moment, it launched the boarding shuttle. Little more than a reinforced box with engines attached. Alan gripped the safety rail as their shuttle shot toward the massive alien vessel. "Brace for impact!" The shuttle crashed into the hull of the flagship, magnetic clamps engaging to secure it in place. Explosive charges blew a hole in the outer hull, and the team rushed through into the alien ship. "Move fast," Alan ordered. "Head for the center of the ship. That's likely where they'll keep the main weapon." High Admiral Zex Toril received the alert of a hull breach but dismissed it as insignificant. "A few humans cannot stop us now. The ignition device is almost charged." On his command screen, a diagram showed the massive weapon powering up. In 20 minutes, it would unleash an energy pulse that would transform Earth's atmosphere into a raging inferno. Alan's team fought their way through the corridors of the alien flagship. They encountered resistance, but the Kelvari seemed confused by the primitive weapons the humans carried. Energy shields flickered and failed against shotgun blasts at close range. Personal armor designed to disperse laser fire provided little. "Protection against armor-piercing bullets. We're getting close," Alan said, checking a rough map they had pieced together from intelligence gathered from the captured ship. "The energy readings are strongest through that door." They reached a massive chamber dominated by a glowing sphere suspended in the center. Energy arced between the sphere and surrounding equipment. 24 Kelvari technicians worked at control stations while guards patrolled the perimeter. "That has to be the weapon," Olivia whispered. "How do we destroy it?" Alan studied the room, noting the power conduits running along the walls. Those lines are feeding energy to the sphere. If we can disrupt them, it might buy us time. He pulled out several explosive charges from his pack. Martinez, take Jones and Lee. Plant these charges on the power conduits. The rest of you will create a distraction. Alan raised his rifle and fired at the guards. The battle erupted immediately, with the humans spreading out to engage the surprised aliens. The Kelvari guards activated energy shields that glowed blue as they absorbed the first few bullets before failing entirely. Olivia and her team moved along the edges of the room, attaching explosives to the power conduits. They had placed all but one when a Kelvari technician spotted them and sounded an alarm. "Detonate now," Alan shouted as more guards poured into the chamber. Olivia triggered the detonator. Explosions rippled around the room as the power conduits ruptured. The energy sphere flickered but remained active. "It's still operational," Olivia called out. "The main control must be hardened against attack." Alan fought his way toward what appeared to be the central control console, where a Kelvari officer worked frantically to stabilize the weapon. As Alan approached, the alien drew a sidearm and fired. A blast of energy hit the wall beside Alan, melting the metal instantly. Alan raised his rifle to return fire, but when he pulled the trigger, nothing happened. The firing pin had jammed. Without hesitation, he dropped the rifle and pulled out his backup weapon, his grandfather's revolver, a Colt .45 that was over 250 years old. The ancient weapon had been maintained meticulously, passed down through generations of his family. The Kelvari officer laughed, a strange clicking sound. "Your primitive tools fail you now, human." "Not all of them," Alan replied, and pulled the trigger. The revolver boomed in the enclosed space. The Kelvari officer staggered back, purple blood seeping from a wound in his chest. Alan moved quickly to the control console and planted his last explosive charge. "Everyone out!" he shouted, back to the entry point. As they retreated, High Admiral Zexteral himself entered the chamber, surrounded by elite guards. He saw the wounded officer and the explosives on the console. "Stop them," he commanded. His personal force field shimmered around him as he moved. Forward, Alan turned, the old revolver still in his hand. Only one bullet remained. He aimed carefully and fired. The bullet passed through Zextestral's force field as if it wasn't there, striking the Admiral in the shoulder. The alien leader fell back, shocked by both the wound and the failure of his supposedly impenetrable defense. "How?" Zextestral gasped as Alan approached him. "How could your ancient weapon penetrate our shields?" Alan stood over the fallen admiral. "Because our obsolete weapons never jam, never need charging, and never get hacked. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." He triggered the final detonator. As explosions rocked the weapon chamber, the humans raced back to their shuttle. Not all would make it, but their mission was accomplished. The atmospheric ignition device would never fire. As the Kelvari flagship began to break apart from internal explosions, the remaining alien vessels broke formation and began to retreat from Earth orbit. Humanity had secured not just survival, but victory, thanks to the weapons their enemies had dismissed as obsolete.